For years, one shocking claim about World War II has spread across books, documentaries, and the internet that Nazi soldiers were fighting on drugs. According to the popular story, Hitler's army marched across Europe powered by methamphetamine tablets. These pills supposedly allowed soldiers to stay awake for days, fight without rest, and push through exhaustion during the lightning-fast blitzkrieg campaigns. It's a powerful image, an army turned into sleepless machines by chemistry. And then there's the truth behind it. German troops did receive stimulant drugs called Pervitin, and millions of tablets were distributed during the early years of the war. But here's the part of the story that almost never gets mentioned. While the world was focused on Nazi drug use, something even bigger was happening among the Allied forces. Britain and the United States were also giving stimulants to their troops, not in small numbers, not secretly, but on a massive scale. During World War II, British forces issued tens of millions of stimulant tablets to pilots and soldiers. Meanwhile, the United States military distributed hundreds of millions of Benzedrine pills across its armed forces. These pills were packed into bomber survival kits, given to pilots before exhausting missions, handed to soldiers preparing for long nights of combat. They were commonly called pep pills, and for many troops, they became just another piece of wartime equipment. So the real story of drugs in World War II isn't just about Nazi methamphetamine. It's about a global conflict where nearly every major army turned to chemistry to keep soldiers awake, alert, and fighting longer than the human body was meant to. And in the long run, the Allies may have relied on these stimulants even more than their enemies. Welcome to the History Banana, and today we're uncovering the surprising story of the Allied pep pill. The connection between drugs and warfare did not start with the Nazis, but Germany's early victories made the idea impossible to ignore. In 1939 and 1940, German forces shocked the world with the speed of their blitzkrieg campaigns. Armored divisions moved rapidly through Poland, France, and the Low Countries, capturing huge territories in a matter of weeks. Soldiers marched long distances with little rest, while tank crews pushed forward almost non-stop. One factor behind this extraordinary endurance was a drug called Pervitin, a methamphetamine stimulant produced by German pharmaceutical companies. The tablets were widely distributed among soldiers, especially during major offensives. Pervitin allowed troops to stay awake for long periods while reducing the feelings of exhaustion. For commanders planning fast-moving operations, this chemical boost seemed like the perfect tool. When Allied intelligence learned about the widespread use of Pervitin, it raised serious concerns. If stimulant drugs could increase endurance in combat, they might become a powerful new tool of modern warfare. But the truth was that the Allies already had their own stimulant. The stimulant used by the Allied forces was called Benzedrine, an amphetamine developed in the United States during the 1930s. Originally marketed as a treatment for nasal congestion, doctors soon noticed that the drug had powerful stimulating effects. Benzedrine increased alertness, boosted energy, and reduced the feeling of fatigue. People who took it often reported improved concentration and the ability to stay awake for long periods. In civilian life, it quickly became popular among workers, students, and truck drivers who needed extra energy. Military planners saw a different opportunity. World War II demanded extreme endurance from soldiers. Pilots flew missions lasting many hours, often in darkness. Infantry units marched across rough terrain with little sleep. A tired pilot could easily lead to deadly mistakes. Sailors spent long nights watching for enemy submarines. Fatigue could misjudge a landing. An exhausted soldier might react too slowly in combat. If a drug could temporarily reduce exhaustion, it might help soldiers perform under some of the most stressful conditions imaginable. Britain was among the first Allied nations to experiment seriously with stimulant use during the war. The Royal Air Force faced particularly exhausting conditions while conducting bombing missions over Germany. These missions often lasted 8 to 10 hours and were frequently flown at night. Pilots had to navigate hostile skies filled with anti-aircraft fire and enemy fighters while maintaining constant concentration. To help combat fatigue, RAF doctors began issuing Benzedrine tablets to pilots and aircrew during especially long missions. Many pilots reported feeling more alert and better able to focus after taking the stimulant. As a result, Benzedrine gradually became part of certain operations. By 1942, the drug was being used on a regular basis in situations where exhaustion posed a serious risk. Among airmen, the tablets actually earned the nickname "wakey wakey pills." Although the drug did not completely remove fatigue, it helped crews remain alert during the most critical stages of their flights. The use of stimulants soon expanded beyond the cockpit. Allied ground forces also began receiving Benzedrine tablets during particularly demanding operations. One well-known example occurred in North Africa during the Second Battle of El Alamein in 1942. British troops preparing for the battle were issued small doses of Benzedrine to help them remain alert during long hours of preparation and combat. The battle lasted nearly 2 weeks and involved intense fighting between Allied and German forces. While stimulants alone did not determine the outcome, their use reflected a growing belief among military planners that chemistry could help soldiers endure the extreme pressures of modern warfare. The United States soon adopted similar practices as it mobilized for war across Europe and the Pacific. American forces faced the same problems as their British allies: long missions, sleep deprivation, and extreme physical stress. To help address these challenges, the U.S. military began distributing Benzedrine tablets throughout its armed forces. Bomber crews often carried the pills in their emergency survival kits. Infantry units sometimes received them before demanding missions. Naval personnel also used stimulants during the long watches at sea. The scale of this program was enormous. During World War II, the United States military distributed hundreds of millions of Benzedrine tablets to its troops. For many service members, the pills became routine, simply another tool that helped them stay awake and focused during critical moments. Benzedrine belongs to a group of drugs known as amphetamines, which stimulates the central nervous system. The drug increases certain chemicals in the brain that control alertness and energy. As a result, users often experience greater concentration and reduced fatigue. For pilots flying long missions, this effect could be extremely valuable. Remaining alert during navigation or landing could mean the difference between survival and disaster. Infantry soldiers also found the stimulant useful during night operations or long periods without sleep. However, the drug was not without risks. Amphetamines could cause irritability, anxiety, and overconfidence. Once the stimulant wore off, users often experienced extreme fatigue. At the time, the long-term risks of stimulant use were not fully understood. Although both sides used stimulant drugs, historians have pointed out important differences in how they were used. German forces relied heavily on methamphetamine during the rapid blitzkrieg campaigns. Soldiers sometimes took large quantities in order to remain awake during intense operations. The Allies generally attempted to use stimulants more carefully. Benzedrine was usually distributed for specific missions rather than continuous use. This reflected a broader difference in strategy. Germany initially aimed for rapid victories, while the Allies were preparing for a long war that would stretch across multiple continents. In that kind of conflict, endurance mattered just as much as speed. Despite their usefulness, stimulant drugs also created problems. Some soldiers experienced severe exhaustion once the effects wore off. Others struggled with anxiety or difficulty sleeping. In later years, researchers found evidence that stimulant misuse had occurred among some veterans. During the war, however, these concerns received little attention. Military commanders were focused on immediate battlefield performance, and anything that helped soldiers stay alert during dangerous missions was considered valuable. World War II pushed soldiers, pilots, and sailors to levels of exhaustion rarely seen before. Battles lasted for days, missions stretched through entire nights, and the pressure to remain alert was constant. To meet these demands, military planners turned to stimulants. Germany had methamphetamine. The Allies had Benzedrine. While these drugs did not win the war on their own, they helped many soldiers endure some of the most exhausting conditions in modern combat. And when we look at the numbers, the story becomes even more surprising, because in the long war that followed the Blitzkrieg years, the Allies may have relied on stimulant drugs even more than the Nazis. If you found this exploration revealing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us here on HistoryBanana, because sometimes a small pill is playing a quiet role in one of the largest wars in human history.